The janitor's shift had barely begun when he noticed something odd. While others were too busy chasing deadlines and promotions, he saw what no one else did. Subtle signs, the kind that most people would dismiss as nothing. The CEO, the most powerful man in the building, sat in his glass-walled office high above the city lights, his suit perfectly pressed, his phone buzzing endlessly. To everyone else, he was untouchable. Wealthy, successful, unstoppable. But to the janitor, he looked fragile. His hand trembled slightly when he lifted his coffee mug. His face was pale beneath the glow of the desk lamp. A faint sweat clung to his forehead despite the cold air conditioning. The janitor paused, mop in hand. He knew these signs too well. Years ago, he had watched someone he loved suffer in silence until it was too late. And now, here they were again, in the man everyone admired, but no one truly cared to look at closely. That night, in a world where people measured worth by wealth, a poor, invisible janitor would make a choice that would not only save a life, but change two destinies forever. Marcus had worked as a janitor for 10 years at Sterling Enterprises, one of the largest investment firms in the city. Every night, he moved silently through the marble hallways, mopping floors that sparkled by morning but never earned him recognition. Most employees barely noticed him. If they did, it was with a polite nod or sometimes a dismissive glance, as if he were just part of the furniture. Marcus had grown used to invisibility. Poverty had a way of humbling a man, and his worn-out shoes and faded uniform were reminders of the struggles he carried home each night. He lived in a small apartment with peeling walls and overdue bills stacked on the kitchen counter. Yet, despite his hardships, Marcus carried a quiet dignity. He worked hard, not for praise, but to ensure his children had food on the table and hope for a better tomorrow. The CEO, Richard Sterling, was everything Marcus was not. A millionaire in his early 50s, Richard was respected, feared, and envied by many. He was the man on the magazine covers, the one employees whispered about in awe. To most, he seemed invincible, too strong, too successful to ever fall. But Marcus had seen something that night. It began with the CEO's coughs echoing faintly through the office hall. Then he noticed Richard gripping his chest for a brief moment when he thought no one was watching. His steps, usually confident and commanding, seemed slower, heavier. Most employees ignored it. They assumed the CEO was just tired from long hours or stressed from endless meetings. But Marcus remembered the same look on his brother's face years ago, the week before he collapsed from a heart attack that took his life. The memory haunted him as he continued cleaning, but his eyes kept drifting back toward the glass office. The janitor's instincts screamed at him. This man was in danger. Still, Marcus hesitated. Who was he, a janitor, to tell a millionaire CEO about his health? People would laugh. They'd tell him to mind his mop and stay out of business. That wasn't his. Yet, something deep inside refused to let him walk away. The next evening, Marcus made his rounds again. The building was quiet, save for the hum of city traffic outside. Richard Sterling was once again in his office, working late. Papers scattered across the desk, phone calls stacking one after another. But tonight, something was different. His condition had worsened. Marcus froze when he saw it. Richard's face was pale, his hand gripping the edge of the desk for balance. Sweat rolled down his temple as he leaned back heavily in his chair. The sight triggered a rush of panic. Marcus dropped his mop and rushed forward. "Sir, are you all right?" Richard, startled, waved him off weakly. "I'm fine. Just tired." His voice was strained, his words slightly slurred. Marcus's heart raced. He knew this was no ordinary fatigue. Every instinct screamed this was a medical emergency. But Richard, proud and stubborn, refused to admit it. "No, sir," Marcus insisted, his voice trembling but firm. "You're not fine. You're showing signs of a heart attack. You need help. Now." Richard glared at him. "You're a janitor. You don't know what you're talking about." But before he could finish, Richard's body betrayed him. His hand clutched his chest, and he collapsed forward with a groan. Marcus's world blurred. Fear shot through him, but he acted on instinct. He grabbed his phone, dialed 911, and shouted for help. While waiting for paramedics, he loosened the CEO's tie, kept him conscious, and spoke calmly. "Stay with me, sir. Stay awake. You're not alone." For once, the invisible janitor's voice was the only one that mattered. The paramedics arrived within minutes, storming the executive floor with urgency. They confirmed what Marcus had feared. Richard Sterling was indeed suffering from a heart attack. His chances of survival depended entirely on how quickly he was treated. As they stabilized him, one of the paramedics turned to Marcus. "If you hadn't called when you did, he might not have made it." Those words echoed in Marcus's mind like thunder. His decision, the choice to care when no one else did, had saved a life. But the story didn't end there. Days later, Richard Sterling woke up in a hospital bed, his body weak, but his mind alive. The first thing he asked for wasn't his assistant, his lawyer, or his board of directors. It was the janitor. When Marcus nervously entered the room, Richard's eyes softened. You saved me," he whispered. Marcus lowered his gaze. Anyone would have done the same. But Richard shook his head. "No, everyone else ignored it. They saw me as too strong to fall. But you saw what no one else did. You cared." Tears welled in Marcus's eyes, though he quickly wiped them away. For once, the millionaire CEO and the poor janitor stood as equals, two men connected not by wealth, but by humanity. Weeks passed. Richard Sterling returned to work, his health now guarded carefully. But something had changed, not just in his routine, but in his heart. The near-death experience had stripped away his pride and reminded him of his own fragility. In the next company-wide meeting, Richard did something unexpected. Standing before hundreds of employees, he pointed toward Marcus at the back of the room. "This man," Richard declared, his voice steady, "saved my life. He noticed what everyone else ignored. And while I sat surrounded by wealth, it was a janitor's compassion that gave me another chance at life." The room erupted in applause. Marcus, usually invisible, stood frozen as the recognition washed over him. For the first time, the spotlight shone not on his broom or mop, but on his heart. Later, Richard quietly pulled Marcus aside. "You'll never be invisible in this building again. From today, you're part of something bigger, and I'll make sure your family never struggles the way you have." Marcus swallowed hard, overwhelmed. He hadn't saved a life for reward or recognition. He had simply done what was right. But in that act, his own life had been transformed. Because sometimes it isn't wealth or status that defines greatness. It's the courage to care when no one else will. And so the poor janitor who once mopped floors in silence walked out of the shadows, not as just a worker, but as a hero.